This Japanese movie is a recollection of memories of friendship, youth, career, and relationships in the 1990s by a 40-year-old man. The time jumps back and forth between 1998 and 2020. The movie begins with Makoto Sato, the main character, wandering through the streets of Tokyo in 2020. As he walks, he comes across a drunken man who has fallen on top of a pile of garbage. Concerned for the man's well-being, Makoto approaches him and asks if he is okay. The drunken man responds with self-pity, lamenting that he has nothing and that everyone is leaving him behind. Makoto tries to help the man up, but the man refuses, insisting that he is trash and that he belongs in the garbage. He goes on to express his belief that 80% of the world's population is also trash, leaving Makoto to try and comfort him by suggesting that most people are useless in some way. This encounter sets the tone for the rest of the movie, which follows Makoto as he looks back on his life and reflects on the relationships, experiences, and choices that have brought him to where he is now. As the story unfolds, we see Makoto navigate through the ups and downs of his past, from the friendships and romances of his youth to the challenges and successes of his career and graphics company. As Makoto's monologue continues, he reflects on his life and the decisions he has made. He talks about how he has become a boring adult and how his relationships always seem to end badly. He remembers the last day of 1999 when he ended a relationship with a girl. The story then jumps back 5 years to 2015 when Makoto was at a farewell party for a colleague, Mr. Aguro. At the party, Makoto is drinking and feeling disillusioned with his life. He receives a card from Mr. Sanai, but he finds the celebration to be quite ordinary. The other employees are moving on to new things, but Makoto is stuck and unsure of what to do next. He continues to drink and shout at people, but nobody seems to notice him. As he wanders around the party, he meets a man who joins him in his search for someone. They end up talking and drinking together, and Makoto contacts another friend, Sekiguchi, but he doesn't show up. Along the way, he bumps into a girl who was a dancer at the show earlier. She feels awkward about her performance and thinks it wasn't professional enough. Makoto tells her he works as a graphic clips artist and that his work will soon be forgotten. The girl understands his sentiment, and Makoto is surprised by her empathy. As they continue to talk, Makoto invites her to leave the party and go to his hotel room. They start to make out heavily, but the girl becomes interested in seeing the Tokyo Tower. Unfortunately, the lights go out, and she is disappointed that she couldn't see it lit up. This disappointment makes her feel sad, and Makoto realizes that he cannot make her happy either. After their encounter at the hotel, Makoto is left feeling empty and lost. He receives an offer from Sekiguchi to work for him for an online class, but he still feels unsatisfied. However, he soon gets a friend request from Kaori Sato, his ex-girlfriend from years ago. He is surprised to see that she is now married with a child. Makoto's mind wanders back to his past relationships, and he starts to think about what could have been. As he returns home, Makoto is greeted by his ex-wife Megumi Ishida. They are both distant towards each other as they start to divide their belongings. Makoto stumbles upon a postcard from Kaori inside a book she gave him before they ended their relationship. Megumi confronts him and asks if he really intended to marry her, but Makoto does not respond. Megumi hands him the key to their house and demands that he give back all the years she spent on their marriage. As she collects her things, Makoto accidentally spills a bag of books on the floor. Despite the heavy rain, Megumi leaves without looking back. Makoto is left alone in their empty house, surrounded by the remnants of his past. He feels lost and unsure of his future. The memories of his past relationships and the choices he made come flooding back, leaving him with a sense of regret and longing. As we jump back to 2008, we see Makoto just starting his career as an artist. He is struggling to make ends meet and is owed money from a client who is being disrespectful. This infuriates another man, who we later learn is named Plaid. Plaid takes matters into his own hands and punches the client repeatedly until they are separated by others around them. Makoto looks on in shock and awe at Plaid's boldness. Later, Makoto runs into Plaid again and thanks him for standing up for him. Plaid brushes off the praise and tells Makoto that he needs to toughen up and not let people walk all over him. He then invites Makoto to come to a party with him, where he introduces him to a group of people who are also struggling artists. Makoto is hesitant at first, but he ends up having a great time and even meets a girl named Kaori Sato, who he later dates. As we continue to jump back and forth through time, we see Makoto's journey as an artist and the ups and downs of his relationships with Megumi and Kaori. Each memory adds a layer to the complex character that is Makoto, and we begin to understand his inner struggles and desires. In 2011, Makoto works double time due to the Japanese earthquake, and his company occupies a larger office space. He is already late for a meeting with Megumi and her mother, and Megumi is unhappy with his shabby appearance. Despite the chaos caused by the earthquake, Makoto is determined to continue working and help his company grow. However, in 2008, Makoto is just starting his work as an artist. He is struggling financially and emotionally. One day, a man whom Makoto owes money to rudely tosses the envelope at him, and the Plaid man snaps. The Plaid man punches the client repeatedly until someone breaks them up, leaving Makoto shaken by the violence. This incident highlights the stark contrast between Makoto's life before and after the earthquake. In 2008, he is struggling to make ends meet and dealing with the violent outburst of others. In 2011, he is working tirelessly to help those affected by the disaster and has become successful in his career. The earthquake has changed Makoto's life in significant ways, and he is now faced with important decisions about his future, including his relationship with Megumi. In the year 2000, Makoto is invited by a coworker to attend their company's 15th anniversary party. However, he finds himself disinterested in the activities happening at the hostess club they go to, which is run by a crossdresser. As the party goes on, his coworkers start buying from a dealer. Meanwhile, Sanai, the younger coworker, is busy DJing for the event, and the rest of the attendees are having a great time. However, Makoto is just watching from afar, feeling empty inside. Despite being surrounded by high spirits, Makoto remains aloof and introspective. He watches as his colleagues pass around ecstasy and get drunk, and hostesses are brought in to sit with them. He eventually washes his face and reflects, only to see Sanai making out with Sue, the waitress from earlier. While everyone else is indulging in worldly pleasures, Makoto decides to drink Pocari instead. Sue comes out to smoke and sits next to Makoto. She reveals that she is interested in people in despair, and the two strike up a conversation. Later on, they visit Nanase's pub, where the crossdresser and others pressure Makoto to call the girl who recently dumped him, possibly Kaori. Sue eventually arrives, and they all celebrate and drink together. They start discussing various topics, and Nanase comments on Sue's beauty, suggesting that she might be an actress or a model. As it turns out, Sue is quite talented and smart, even as a polyglot. She even sings beautifully, and they pressure Makoto to duet with her. Despite feeling awkward, he sings along with her. After the anniversary party, Makoto and Sue return to their respective jobs. Sue continues working as a waitress, while Makoto begins getting rid of his things as a way to move on from Kaori. Makoto and his friends make plans to visit Nanase's pub again, and he tells them that he's moving to another house. They decide to drink until morning and go fishing. While they are at the pub, Sue remarks that ordinary is still the best, but Nanase disagrees, stating that 80% of people are trash, and the rest are scum. When it's time to go home, Nanase asks Makoto to walk Sue home. Along the way, they have a conversation about Makoto's ex-girlfriend, presumably Kaori, and how his friends are trying to help him forget about her. As they walk, Sue and Makoto play a game where they can only step on the white tiles. When they arrive at her house, Sue invites him in, and they start drinking together. However, their conversation is interrupted by a phone call from someone, and Sue says she has to go to work. Makoto assumes it's bartending, but Sue is actually a prostitute, and the room is rented by Sanai for her to meet with clients. She promises to call him back when she's done. Makoto waits outside in the cold, looking at the postcard while he waits for Sue. Eventually, her client leaves, and Sue is happy that Makoto stayed. They spend the night together, and Sue seems content with her current way of life. They cuddle and share intimate moments. Meanwhile, at work, news about Sanai's businesses spreads, including the one with Sue. Sanai is exposed for exploiting women services. Makoto tries to call Sue, but her number can no longer be reached. He looks at the picture sticker from the night they met, wondering if he'll ever see her again. As the year 1999 comes to a close, Makoto finds himself back at the same astronomy-themed love hotel where he first met Kaori. He tries to persuade her to stay with him and meet his parents, but Kaori seems uninterested and finds the idea too ordinary. Makoto appears to agree with her, and they go their separate ways on the first day of the new millennium, with Kaori promising to bring CDs the next time they meet. A year earlier, in 1998, Makoto receives a postcard from Kaori featuring a beautiful sunset from India. Kaori appears to have taken on a hippie or alternative style, as she left for India. Meanwhile, a gunshot is heard at the mahjong house where Sanai works. The company returns to its humble beginnings in a cramped office with only a few staff. Sekiguchi takes it upon himself to train Makoto to work better with his designs and to take pride in his work. On the television, news reports reveal that the earlier gunshots were orchestrated by a gang member who was familiar to Makoto. Despite the challenges, they continue to service various station clients for their graphics. However, they face pushback from a show staff who demand a 30% discount due to tardiness. Makoto explains that the extra time was necessary to ensure the quality of the work, but the show director remains obstinate. As Makoto rides his scooter through the night, he can't help but feel a sense of emptiness as he sings along to the song. When he reaches his office, he bumps into a coworker and finds solace in smoking a cigarette. His boss advises him to spend time with his girlfriend, but Kaori is not around. Makoto explains that Kaori is not interested in marriage or ordinary things. She seems to have unique tastes and preferences, and Makoto is accepting of that. Going back to the scorching summer of 1997, Makoto wakes up to a hot morning and shares a smoke with his roommate, Sekiguchi. As they chat, Makoto's pager goes off, and it's Kaori. They talk on a landline, and Kaori invites him to a hot spring. But Makoto can't go because they are understaffed at work. Kaori calls him ordinary, and they both believe that the world will end when the 20th century comes to a close. Despite the pressure from Kaori, Makoto is committed to his work, and it seems that his dedication has paid off. Their company, which started in a cramped office with just a few staff, is now servicing various station clients for their graphics. However, things are not always smooth, and Makoto faces challenges when the show staff demands a 30% discount due to tardiness. Although Makoto tries to explain that the tardiness was necessary for the quality, the show director remains adamant. As Makoto reflects on his past and present, he can't help but wonder about his future. His mind wanders to Kaori, who is now in India, and he hopes that she will return soon. Despite their differences, he misses her company and unique perspective on life. After getting permission from his understanding boss, Sekiguchi, Makoto spends the day with his girlfriend, Kaori. They take a ride together, listening to their favorite music and holding hands. As they drive along, Makoto confesses that he wants to quit his job, travel abroad, and gain a fresh perspective on life. Kaori shares a story about a person who spent their entire life in the countryside but traveled to the Milky Way, emphasizing that it's not about where you go but who you're with. As they take a break from driving, Kaori falls asleep, and Makoto takes some photos of her sleeping. He is mesmerized by her beauty and can't resist capturing the moment. When Kaori wakes up, she runs out of the car and invites Makoto to take better photos of her as she smiles and radiates positivity. The couple spends the day enjoying each other's company, and Makoto realizes how much he loves Kaori. However, Kaori seems to have a different perspective on their relationship. She sees Makoto as too ordinary and not adventurous enough for her taste. Despite this, Makoto cherishes the time they spend together and hopes to continue making memories with Kaori, even if it means staying ordinary. Despite Makoto's concerns about his job, he continues to work hard, delivering tapes and designing graphics. However, in 1996, he suffers an accident that damages the nerve in his hand. As he struggles to collect the tapes he was carrying, a man comes out of a car to help him. Makoto recognizes the man as the mobster who was involved in the shooting that took place earlier. Despite his initial apprehension, Makoto accepts the mobster's help and is grateful for his aid. The man encourages Makoto to go see a doctor and even provides first aid by wrapping his injured hand. Back at the hotel, Makoto expresses his worries to Kaori about his job and how it might lead to his death. He talks about a novel he once read where the protagonist lived each day differently, and how that had inspired him. Makoto even shares that he had once tried to write a novel himself, influenced by and had fallen asleep only to wake up and find that the protagonist had written the entire book himself. However, when Kaori suggests that Makoto should write a novel, he claims that he has nothing to write. Despite the challenges they face, Makoto and Kaori continue to enjoy their time together, surrounded by music and arts. They go on vacations, exploring the city and buying records. Kaori shows her thoughtfulness by giving fruits to people they meet along the way. They spend their nights in cheap love hotels, where they make love and enjoy each other's company. During this time, Makoto seems to have stopped smoking and tells Kaori that it is bad for his health. However, Kaori is not bothered by this and continues to smoke. While they enjoy their carefree relationship, Makoto continues to work hard, trying to build a better life for himself and Kaori. As the year changes to 1995, technology starts to become old school. Makoto's ambitions become less grand, and he starts working in a wrapping factory alongside a colleague named Nanes, who often cross-dresses and plans to quit his job soon. In Makoto's kitchen, he prepares a meal for Nanes while they hang out. One day, Nanes shows Makoto an ad from a magazine for someone who loves in Yukara, and Makoto becomes interested. Nanes gives him the magazine and even peels off a particular page for Makoto to keep. During this time, Makoto enjoys a simple life and spends his free time in his room, listening to his favorite singer and writing letters. Makoto writes a letter to the secret sender of the Yukara ad, asking if he likes Kenji Ozawa, and someone writes back. The package that arrives is well designed and smells sweet. The letter requests a meeting since they share a love for Kenji Ozawa. The sender turns out to be a girl named Inukara, who is thrilled that Makoto wrote back. She had felt alone in her love for Kenji Ozawa and had crafted scrapbook letters while communicating with Makoto through letters. Inukara expresses her insecurity about her appearance, saying that she's ugly and that Makoto will regret meeting her. Despite her concerns, Makoto is eager to meet her and get to know her better. Their love for Kenji Ozawa and music brings them together, and they continue to correspond through letters. As they continued to talk, Makoto became more comfortable around Kaori. They shared stories about their childhood and their dreams for the future. Makoto talked about his love for music and his dream of becoming a novelist, but he expressed his doubts about his abilities. Kaori, on the other hand, talked about her passion for art and her desire to become a designer. As the conversation flowed, they discovered that they had a lot in common. They both loved Kenji Ozawa's music, and they shared the same taste in anime. Makoto was surprised at how easy it was to talk to Kaori, and he found her unique and interesting. They decided to walk around the city and explore some record stores. Kaori showed Makoto some of her favorite old records, and they listened to them together. Makoto enjoyed being around Kaori, and he admired her carefree and adventurous spirit. As they walked, they stumbled upon a fruit stand, and Kaori bought some fruits to share with the people they met along the way. Makoto found her generosity endearing, and he was touched by her kindness. Eventually, they ended up in a cheap love hotel where they spent the night together. Their relationship was centered around their shared love for music and arts, and they enjoyed each other's company. However, Makoto's life took a turn when he suffered an accident that damaged the nerve in his hand. The incident made him realize that his job was not worth risking his life, and he expressed his concerns to Kaori. Despite Makoto's worries, Kaori encouraged him to pursue his dreams and suggested that he write a novel. Makoto, however, felt that he had nothing to write. Makoto's new job at Sekiguchi's company brings him a sense of accomplishment and hope for the future. He is excited to start training and learn new skills like Photoshop. To celebrate, he invites Kaori to go out with him. During their conversation, Kaori confesses her feelings for Makoto and suggests that they go to a love hotel. Though hesitant at first, Makoto agrees to the date and they make plans to meet that night. As he leaves the dormitory, Makoto is congratulated by Nanace, who gives him flowers as a token of support. Arriving at the love hotel, Makoto is surprised to see that it's the same one he's been to before. Feeling embarrassed, he apologizes for the lack of luxury, but Kaori assures him that it's fine. She confesses that it's her first time and they nervously wait for each other to finish showering. Makoto is impressed by the bathroom and the amenities of the hotel. He shares with Kaori that he currently delivers floppy disks for the graphics his company produces. As they both stare at the TV, waiting for each other to make the move, the tension in the room increases. Makoto finally gathers the courage to lean in and kiss Kaori, but she still feels awkward and asks him to turn off the lights and close the bathroom door. Makoto awkwardly embraces her as they start undressing each other, and the awkwardness slowly fades away. Kaori feels shy to show her petite body, but they finally make love. Months later, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, their company resumes operations in 2020 and interviews new hires for their graphics team. Despite the restrictions and limitations, their business continues to thrive. Makoto decides to invite a coworker out for a drink, but due to the restrictions, they are unable to meet up. So, Makoto goes out for a drink alone. As he leaves the izakaya, he sees a man being forced out of the bar because he couldn't stop drinking. Makoto recognizes the man as Nanace, who had been drunk earlier. Nanace compliments Makoto for doing well and they catch up on old times. It turns out that Nanace's pub had closed down, and he didn't feel like doing it anymore, especially with the worsening situation due to the restrictions. Sekiguchi had also gone through a divorce and was now running an online cram school. Nanace mentions that he can no longer laugh at people's misfortunes. They decide to walk around together, with Nanace holding a bottle and Makoto a beer. Makoto thanks him for everything, and suddenly, Nanace pulls him over, and they collapse on a pile of trash. As they lie there, looking up at the stars, they reflect on the changes that have occurred in their lives and the world around them. Nanace started crying, feeling left behind by all his friends who had moved on to better places. Makoto tried to help him up and comforted him by saying that almost everyone is trash. As Makoto walks through the streets, he contemplates his life and the decisions he has made. The lockdowns on bars and restaurants have made it difficult for people to unwind after a long day at work. The radio plays Kenji Ozawa's song, bringing Makoto some comfort. The song triggers memories of his past, including Nanace, and the flowers he gave him, and his failed relationships. Makoto arrives at the stairs and junction where he separated from Kaori 20 years ago. He remembers how much Kaori liked the motel room and how it made her feel calm. Although tempted to go back, he fights the urge and wanders off into the street. He starts running and a montage of videos from his past plays in his mind, reminding him of his marriage, passing friends, career, and overall life so far. Eventually, Makoto grows tired of running and stumbles upon a renovated building where he first met Kaori. He watches a memory of himself interacting with Kaori, both of them holding a wave bag, and realizes that it was an ordinary moment, just like many others in his life. As he walks away from the building, Makoto feels a sense of acceptance about his life, and the choices he has made, accepting that he has lived ordinarily against Kaori's wishes.